Hey, today we're going to take a first photograph of a high contrast scene where we're going to be able to see the capacity of the raw file when we take a capture of shadows and so that our white balance isn't burned. We're going to have our ISO on the lowest setting possible at all times to allow us to capture a lot of light. When we're trying to capture outdoor scenes, it's the best option. If our lowest is ISO 100, then use this one, and not 200 or 400, which would limit the entrance of light to the center, because that would force us to use higher speeds, and we won't be able to capture as much light as we need. We're going to take our first picture of this high contrast scene, and then we'll see how it comes out later on. There we go. We have to pay attention to our photometer, put it at 0, and when we look at the picture, we're going to see that if we want the light and the shadow in this contrast scene, the histogram is going to tell us that it's gone to the right, and the lights have been burnt. So, we have to put it differently when working in RAW and when we want a finished photo. Okay, I've chosen the angular, so we get the whole scene that I'm seeing, an f8 diaphragm to get that field depth. I'm going to have to listen to the exposure meter with the evaluative measurement. I get a speed of 160th of a second, I shoot, I look at the histogram, and I can see that the measurement system of the camera is trying to make the shadows and the lights come out well, without achieving both of them. I have a photo in which I cannot see the shadows well, and my lights, as my histogram says, are starting to flare. If we look at the photo enlarged, we can see how the area of shadows here isn't that bad, but our lights are flared up. What we want is our lights to stay just on the right side, without flaring, and then when we develop it, get the shadow area that's too dark in the shot, and we'll expose, thinking more about the lights than the shadow, and the development will solve this, all these dark bits. This way, the more light we have, the more light we'll have to work with to illuminate the shadow areas, and the image will have less noise in the end. Okay, in a contrast situation like this one we have here, the ideal thing to do is to put the measurement on a punctual mode, zoom in, direct the objective at an area with a lot of light, like the sky in this case, and with what the exposure meter tells us, we have to overexpose with a point and a third, and with that exposure, later we can make a general shoot. I got 125, and in this case, as I had the diaphragm a little more close than before, an f11. Now with the photo with 125, f11, look at the histogram, and I can see that it gets just to the right, and it doesn't go over the top. The shadows are a little dark, and this is what we're going to work on later in the program. I'm going to take another shot now of a high contrast shot again, the Picasso Museum entrance in Malaga. I have the measurement set on evaluative, and paying attention to the photometer, it tells me a 60th of a second, f8, I take the photo, I look, and I can see that the lights are overexposed, they're burned. It would be difficult to recover that, so we're going to do the same thing again we did before, punctual measurement, zoom in, and the most illuminated area, the sky in this case, and what I'm going to do is overexpose a point and a third, on the punctual measurement on the sky. I get a 100 f8. In this way, the lights won't be burnt, and I take the photo with that speed and that diaphragm. I'm not going to look at my exposure meter, and I can see in the histogram is perfect. I got to the right, the shadows are a little darker. Later in the development, we can work on them.